Anybody love someone so damaged, and we don't always add up, but somehow we're always enough. 7, 8, 9, 10, baby, here we go again. If this is just a fraction of what lies ahead, then count me in, 'cause you know I'm loving this, I'm loving this. You make me feel even though I'm odd. Subtract what's left and carry my heart. Believe in what we got. Pay no attention what you've been taught. You plus love plus me. 1 + 1 makes 3. How can this be? You and me make a prime number. I see that smirk. Guess you better check my work, 'cause the way you got me feeling is a little bit blurred. So leaning close, nobody needs to know. Baby, they're all square and I've got them curves. Oh, we don't always add up, no, but somehow we're always enough. You make me feel even though I'm odd. Subtract what's left and carry my heart. Believe in what we got. Pay no attention what you've been taught. You plus love plus me. 1 + 1 makes 3. How can this be? You and me make a prime number. You and me. We don't always add up, but somehow we're enough. You and me, we got that weird love. You make me feel even though I'm odd. You gotta believe in what we got. You make me feel even though I'm odd. Subtract what's left and carry my heart. Believe in what we got. Pay no attention what you've been taught. You plus love plus me. 1 + 1 makes 3. How can this be? You and me. You make me feel even though I'm odd. Subtract what's left and carry my.
Hi, this is Val Von Torn of Metatron Power and Light. You're listening to Gary Anderson and Night Dreams Talk Radio.
Coming to you from the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network newsroom, I'm Guy Ticker with the strange news. Discovery of shipwreck off New York coast may be linked to the legendary SS Savannah. The discovery of a large piece of what appears to be shipwreckage drifted ashore on Fire Island near Long Island, New York, following a series of intense storms on the East Coast. The piece is believed to be part of the legendary SS Savannah, famous as the first steamship to cross the Atlantic Ocean. If it is true, then a fine piece of history has been uncovered, allowing researchers and experts to get a clearer image of the history of both the vessel and the area. I'm Guy Ticker. The Strange News is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Do you have a strange story? Contact us at nightdreamstalkradio.com.
I'm Marlowe, Private Eye, here with another strange and bad case. Join me with a new and strange case each week on Night Dreams.
I was listening to my favorite radio show, Night Dreams Talk Radio, and I get a phone call from Captain Watson from the Hollywood Police Department, North Division. He says, Marlowe, we have another one. And I go, another one what? He goes, another murder. And we can't figure it out. My detectives have been there for 8 hours, and they still can't get any clues. Marlowe, can you go over there and help them? I said, sure, Captain Watson. So I get in my car, a 57 Edsel, and I cruise down the highway. I get down to North Hollywood. I go to the apartment. I knock on the door. I walk in, and the detectives are drinking coffee and eating donuts. They said, Marlo, we can't figure this one out. Can you help us? Well, I walked around, and they showed me the body in the kitchen. She was naked on the floor. I said she was naked on the floor. I walked around, and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't figure out how she died. And then, on the kitchen table, I got my clue. There was a bowl of cornflakes.
You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
Friday already, JC. Boy, this week is just flown by. Or it's Thursday. I'm losing days. I must have Alzheimer's.
You'd forget if you did, so it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it.
No, I keep thinking about tomorrow. I got to go in the hospital for testing, and I don't want to go. They're going to have to take me in chains. You know that. Well, you know what it is. It's National Protection Day.
Oh,
for horses.
Oh, gotcha. Never heard of it, but you know what? There's a day for everything, so why not?
There's a JC Day, too. Oh, the Self-Injury Awareness Day.
Okay, that's a good one.
How about National Sun-Kissed Orange Day?
Now, it could go either way. What's that mean? Do you sun-kiss an orange, or is it sun-kissed
No,
orange?
the sun-kissed oranges. It's their day.
They got their own day.
They have their own day. Well, a Florida woman tries to pass a drug test using soda and tap water.
Wonder how that turned out. Probably failed anyway.
Well, Sharon Hunter, 44, tried to pass a drug test with a mixture of soda and water she had hidden inside herself in a pill bottle, according to the county sheriff's office.
Wow, that's what you call sleight of hand or sleight of something. I'll tell you what, I don't know. Why, oh my.
I don't understand people. How could it pass as urine, soda, and water?
I don't. That's a good question. And then it's got to, whatever they're looking for, it's got to have that in it. Plus, it's got to have not what they're not looking for. So, I don't know.
Now they say if you don't have enough vitamin D, you're going to have illness. If they say you take too much in supplements, that it can cause dementia.
Listen, it's a fine line we walk as human beings, Gary. Let me tell you, everything's bad for you and everything's good for you.
Yeah, well, everything is actually bad for you if you think about it. If again, you know what the doctors told me? They said, you know what? Everybody should fast. What they should do is eat their dinner before 8 o'clock at night and then not eat anything till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon the next day, and longevity will increase about 5%.
I've actually been doing that for the last month or so. Actually, believe it or not.
Well, wasn't that because of lack of money? Because my check bounced to you?
Well, your checks are like basketballs. They're multi useful.
Well, yeah. Well, if it rains and you could take that check, right, and just put it on that on your roof where it's leaking at, and stretch it right over the hole.
Plus, if it gets wet, you can always write something else on there because the ink's going to run right off of it.
I don't use that type of ink. It disappears by the time the check gets to you. It's disappearing ink.
Oh, you're getting clever.
Well, I did that one time to the Internal Revenue Service, but I accidentally used the wrong pen, and it didn't disappear.
Yeah, listen, what a better way to not get their attention than do something like that.
Yeah. Well, you want a new jacket. There's a place on eBay selling human flesh jackets.
Oh.
It's called Flesh Crafter. It takes about 3 weeks to make it. You can have a human skin jacket for as low as $720.
No to the no. I mean, why would I want to bring maybe somebody's JoJo into my on me or around? No, that's just wrong.
Yeah, the jackets are made 100% of human flesh and can be custom made for you starting out at $720. The creepy coats can be ordered online, well, through eBay account.
It's got me wondering how they get their supply. Or do they put it in that ad in the paper? Hey, when you go, we need you. Or what? You want to live on?
Well, it's that serial killer in Hollywood.
Drumming up business.
Yeah, he's peeling the skin off of the murder victims. I don't know. Where can they get? I mean, where do you go get human? Well, I don't really want to know, but it's going to be interesting. I bet the authorities are going to check this one out.
Yeah, and I bet, listen, they sell so many of them, somebody's going to have some kind of a haunting, I think.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to wear a jacket made out of human flesh.
Neither would I. I wouldn't want to wear anything out of human flesh. I've seen shoes, too, made out of them. It's bizarre.
Could you imagine you're out on a date, and your date looks at you and says, JC, I sure like that sports jacket. And you look at her with it's made out of 100% human skin. I wonder how long she's going to be with you.
Yeah, and she'd be like, "Where'd you get that?" Oh, my ass girlfriend donated it to me.
Yeah, you could say that too. Didn't a famous, well, in the horror type movies, the monster from the Black Lagoon, didn't he just pass on?
Yes, Rico Browning. Hey, listen, that guy was an icon, man. He was one of the last surviving. Well, he was the last surviving original member of the Universal Monsters. He was underground cameraman. Was a very good swimmer. That's how he got his job to begin with. They liked the way he swam. He was so smooth underwater, and he did all the stunts underwater. Yeah, he was the what do you call it? Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, well, that's a big loss. In fact, I just watched that the other night on YouTube. A lot of people don't realize you can go on YouTube now and watch movies if you don't mind a commercial about every 3 minutes. But, it's what I like about those old movies is the zippers. Do you ever notice you can see the zippers on virtually all those monster outfits?
Yeah, especially the creature from the lagoon, if you look real good. And he played that role, what was there, like 3 or 4 of those or something, I think he played.
Oh, yeah. Did you want to go to the Black Lagoon and run into him?
No, listen, that was kind of creepy when I was young watching that. I tell you, I was a little hesitant going fishing to the local pond after that.
Oh, yeah. Who do we have on chat?
Well, we have Kim Libby. We have Queen of Mean, Nancy Malcolm. Barb is on there tonight. I think Kim's husband's David is on there. I see Bob Clark's on there.
Yeah, that's you.
There's all kind of good people.
Yeah, but, some people hidden again.
Well, yeah, that happens. They got that from you.
Well, you never know. Maybe the IRS is looking for them. Well, you know what? They're getting a signal from the sun, and it's like a heartbeat-like signal. And the NASA is getting concerned. What type of signal is this coming from the sun? Is it dying?
I tell you, anytime anything gives off signals that's really got your attention, especially something that is basically a giant nuclear bomb that is 1,000,000 times bigger than the Earth, that's could be concerning.
Well, you imagine you go to a restaurant and you complain about your steak. Well, this particular restaurant really has a answer for it. What they'll do is then serve you a maggot-infested steak.
Oh, what are you getting?
If you complain about your steak, right, not tasting good, being tough or whatever, they'll go get you a special steak. It's infested with maggots and cook it and serve it to you without you knowing it naturally. And can you imagine? That's the best steak I ever had.
That reminds me of the story you told about your buddy.
Oh, yeah. Real quick story here, folks. I had a friend that embarrassed me. This is like before I married my wife. So this puts it about 48 years ago. I went out with this guy. We became friends. I didn't know this guy was a world cheapskate. His father was a multimillionaire, but, evidently, I should have figured something's wrong. You go to their house. It was a mansion. He's driving an old beater Volkswagen. So evidently his father didn't trust him with, anything was worth much of anything. And he goes, one day, let's go out to dinner with some dates and go down to, a place is called El Gacho. That's like the richest, most expensive restaurant in Seattle. Even 48 years ago, you're talking a couple $100 a plate. That's how expensive it is. And we went there and he goes, just order anything you want. Order any champagne, any wine, anything you want. I go, we're talking a lot of money, my friend. And he goes, no, don't worry about it. Just order anything you want. So, my date orders what she wanted. I ordered what I wanted. And then it was almost time for the bill, right? And then all of a sudden, he's putting his hands around his stomach and he's bending over. Oh, my stomach hurts. And he's saying it loud enough people hear it. Naturally, because it's an upper end restaurant, they don't want anybody complaining about their food, right? So the next step is that he got his meal for free. All of us did, which was kind of embarrassing. But about a month or so goes by, I forgot about it. He goes, hey, we had some really nice hot dates. We decided going out to dinner. He pulled the same thing a second time. I had some friends that came over from Greece, multimillionaires. Their mother wanted to die in the United States. They were wealthy. They own marble quarries and stuff. And they had a Greek restaurant. They didn't care if anybody came in or not. It was a hobby to them. And I got to know the two brothers real well. And I bring my friend in there. And he orders the most expensive steak. He eats 3/4 of it. Then he goes, oh, my stomach hurts. My stomach hurts. And I'm going, well, I'm paying for it. And he goes, no, well, but my stomach hurts. So, and he complained about the steak didn't taste good. So, one of the brothers said, hey, come and talk to me for a minute. And I went and talked to him. He goes, what's going on with this guy? I said, he's done it 2 times before. Really? Yeah, he's done it 2 times before. So they pulled out a beautiful steak. They threw it down on the kitchen floor. The one brother unzipped his pants and urinated on it.
Oh, my God.
And then put it on the broiler, cooked it. And my friend said, oh, my God, this is the best steak I ever had.
Best one ever. Jeez. Listen, there's a lesson to be learned. You never get your food taken back and then order other food or get it fixed. That is a no. Don't do it.
Don't ever do that. But, I was about ready to throw up, to be honest with you. And, the brothers and that, we were on the back room because I said, excuse me for a minute, Bob. And I left him there for a minute and we were laughing our head off because he said it was the best tasting steak he ever had. Maybe it was the marinade sauce, huh?
It might have been the creamy Italian or something mixed in it. I don't know. But here's the thing. If he did it while it was on the grill, what about the other patrons afterwards? There had to be some residue left over. Oh, my goodness.
I don't know. I don't even know if they even had many people come into the place. They didn't care. They didn't care. It was a hobby. Nothing more than a hobby. But they had fantastic baklava. I mean, I would die for baklava right now. A man was convinced he saw a Civil War veteran ghost lurking around his property. And he wasn't happy about that.
He wasn't happy about it. Was he on the other side? The other blue and the gray?
I don't know. A man is really, really upset with his wife because his wife said, you know what? I don't want your friends coming over here every Friday and Saturday night and drinking beers in our house anymore.
Uh-oh.
So he gets really upset and he builds himself a bar in the backyard. Now, I'm talking about it looks like a bar you would go into. I mean, he has everything in it, a dining area, chairs, tables. I mean, you name it, it's in there. And it looks from the outside and inside, it looks like a bar. And then his wife said, how much did it cost? And he said, I built it for $100,000.
He's got a regular joint he built out in the backyard. He got a staff and all too. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, thousands and tens of thousands of birds are overwhelming Mexican streets, and they're figuring out something is going on. Could it be the end of the world? because the birds are flying the wrong direction.
I think that magnetic field has messed up a lot of the birds' directions and where they're going, and really messing with them.
A California glider pilot caught a possible UFO in mid-flight off his cell phone.
You know what? It might be dangerous flying some of that stuff nowadays. You may get one of them sidewinders coming at you.
A wife thought her husband died 10 years early. And, she had, the ashes sitting on her mantle of her place. And she went through all the grieving of the man, her husband, died. Well, she went into a shopping mall. Guess who she saw?
Oh, boy. I can guess.
It was her husband. I wonder how he passed that one off.
Right. He could have just said, hey, you know what? Somebody cloned me and brought me back. How are you been? Isn't it a miracle?
Yeah. Can you believe that? I don't know how many people could have got away with that. But I'll tell you one thing, ashes to ashes. So when we come back, who's our guest? What are we going to be talking about? Real quick there.
Our guest is Mark Carpenter. We're going to be talking about ancient giants, current giants, and all the conspiracies and cover-ups that go with it.
Okay, stay tuned. It's going to be an interesting show. You're listening to, a private... No, I'm not that. I'm going to be having dreams now that on this private eye. You know that.
Listen here, Spade. How would it suit you if I got your buddy's diamond and heart to club you one of these days?
I don't know, sweetie.
I'm losing my mind for the sake of love. I've been trying to reveal it, what I've been so afraid of. Your coldness makes my heart go weak, so numb that I can barely speak. This pain keeps water in the sea. If I weren't so desperate to be free, I'd keep my distance, babe. The more that I know about you, the more that I want you, baby. They say that good love will yield the best from me. I know it to be true. This moment won't last forever. No remedies whatsoever. These feelings we choose to pass on for lesser love. You know it to be true.
Coming to you from the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network newsroom, I'm Guy Ticker with the Strange News. Discovery of shipwreck off New York coast may be linked to the legendary SS Savannah. The discovery of a large piece of what appears to be shipwreckage drifted ashore on Fire Island near Long Island, New York, following a series of intense storms on the East Coast. The piece is believed to be part of the legendary SS Savannah, famous as the first steamship to cross the Atlantic Ocean. If it is true, then a fine piece of history has been uncovered, allowing researchers and experts to get a clearer image of the history of both the vessel and the area. I'm Guy Ticker. The Strange News is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Do you have a strange story? Contact us at nightdreamstalkradio.com. Do you remember how great paranormal talk radio was in the 80s and 90s? Night Dreams Talk Radio brings back to you talk radio like you remember, with your host, Gary Anderson, broadcasting to you live from his secret compound deep in the great Northwest. Now, here's Gary.
And here I am, JC. I'm sorry the computer decided to put some garbage in front of you.
I was telling you that in a message, but you were too busy. But yeah,
I was busy like you. I was thinking about that steak. I wonder who was in that jar of ashes.
Right. So do the listeners want to know, too.
Yeah. Well, what can you tell the listeners more about our guest here?
Well, our guest is Mark Carpenter, and he is a cultural anthropologist, author, explorer, and he has expertise in human origin paradigms. He has lived alongside Mayans, Native Americans, and Polynesians, learning their heritage. Now, he reveals discoveries regarding giants, lost civilizations, and cover-ups and ancient prophecy.
Well, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to have you. What got you into, giants? How old were you when you started getting interested in giants?
Well, I didn't really understand at the time it was giants that I was interested in. But it goes back to when I was really young, when my father and I used to drive through rural Ohio. Our family had some land out near Somerton, and we used to drive all through there, Marietta, all through the Ohio River Valley, and I became fascinated with the burial mounds. I wanted to understand the mystery of the burial mounds, and as I got older, it evolved into Stonehenge and pyramids, and then ultimately the disappearance of the Maya, which was where then my paradigm shifted.
Yeah, in the UK, they got a lot of those burial mounds, too.
Oh, yes, they do. Silbury Hill comes to mind immediately. Silbury Hill is virtually identical to Grave Creek Burial Mound in Moundsville, West Virginia.
Wow. And how many years have you been doing this?
Well, formally, my formal education, began in my early 20s, but I was fascinated with it years before that. So we just call it 20 years. I've been studying this for about 20 years.
Has anybody ever, harassed you for, looking for giants and stuff like that?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, there's a certain percentage of people who, dismiss me as delusional or something, and that's fine. Academically, it destroyed my career. It wasn't just simply about, me believing in giants, but I encountered cover-ups. And I was confrontational about it, and I was aggressive in my research and my snooping, and they didn't like that. And at first, I was offered a job, basically a bribe, a payoff, and it was very tempting. But when I did not accept it, then it just became very hostile, and ultimately, I just had to change the focus of my career.
Very interesting. I know JC has a few minutes of questions to ask you. Go ahead, JC.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm just curious, Mark, with your confrontation with some of these powers that be, have they ever threatened you along, over the years?
Well, it got pretty hairy at the end of the Mayan fiasco. The Mayan archaeology fiasco got pretty heated. I flipped the table over. I flipped the table over on some archaeologists, and there was a guy who seemed to be following me around, and I had previously seen him working as a laborer for the INAH at the Palenque site. He was there, and I saw him later in Tulum, which is way, way far away. He definitely wasn't working out there, and it was strange. It seemed like he wanted me to know that he was following me. And later on, I did encounter him, and I just approached him, and I said, "Why? What are you doing here? What?" And he just said that life is cheap in Mexico. And he just walked away. I interpreted that as a threat.
Well, yeah. What was the big thing with the Mayans that they didn't, that you were rubbing them wrong?
Well, it was all about Pakal and the Red Queen.
And tell us a little bit
Pakal
about
and the
that.
Red Queen were my obsession.
Okay.
And that it was that ruffled the feathers, because there is a cover-up still ongoing regarding Pakal and the Red Queen, and really all of Mayan archaeology, but it's crystallized in them.
Yeah, so they don't. So tell us, because some listeners may not know, they don't think that Pakal was with the Red Queen. Is that what it is?
Okay, so what I discovered in my obsessive research of Pakal and the Red Queen was that both of the sets of remains, their whereabouts are currently unknown. Okay. Nobody, tourist or scientist, is allowed in either burial chamber. We know the Red Queen's remains are not in her burial chamber because they say so, and there are photos of it empty. And they allegedly reinterred her somewhere, in some secret location. I don't believe it. I think I know where she is. Her remains are in a laboratory somewhere, and the DNA from both Pakal and the Red Queen have been suppressed. I can prove definitively that they did DNA testing and that they do have genetic results, but they don't want to make those results public. We know both Pakal and the Red Queen had deformed skulls. They admit that as well. But I don't think they want these skulls examined by anybody, ever.
Yeah, now these skulls, are they the ones that are elongated also?
With their bones, like gigantism and other polydactyly, perhaps.
Right. And so that's the big reason why they're suppressing this DNA, because it's not just with the Mayans. It seems to be anything giant related from anywhere in North America, Central America, all over the world, isn't it?
It is. It's a vast conspiracy. The UN has many tentacles, and among those tentacles are UNESCO and the Smithsonian and National Geographic and other institutions like the Royal Geographic in England. You got Heritage Malta covering up Malta. You got the INAH in Mexico covering up in Mexico. And yes, they're orchestrating a cover-up about lost civilizations, the antediluvian history of humanity. They are covering that up, absolutely, all over the world.
Right, and it's been going on a long time now. And all your research with these giants, do you think they're humanoid, or are they part alien, or are they part just something that's we don't know, or what do you think they are?
They're human. Scientifically, I've come up with some terminology that I think is accurate. If we wanted to scientifically categorize them, I would call them an invasive hominid hybrid species. So invasive, meaning they're not in equilibrium with the environment, and that goes for all environments all over the planet. So they're not in harmony, they're not in equilibrium with the planet, they're invasive. Like here in Maryland, we have a problem with an invasive problem with snakehead fish.
Right.
Asian immigrants released the snakehead fish in the tributaries, and because they have no natural predators here, and the environment is very suitable to them, they multiply like crazy. They grow very large, and they eat everything in sight, and they can devastate an entire ecosystem.
Gotcha.
And so scientists here are trying to combat that. You know, they put like bounties on catching snakeheads and things of this nature. You got a similar problem in Florida with Burmese pythons. Exotic pet collectors release Burmese pythons into the Everglades.
Right.
And because they have no natural predators, they grow extremely large and they multiply like crazy, and they eat everything in sight. You got deer and alligator and even dogs and even children potentially being eaten by giant pythons.
So let me ask you then, so the giants, are they still existing? They're still out there, and are they still, maybe that's what's going on? They're evasive to the environment. And if the giants are still out there, do you think the powers that be, they tried to eradicate them secretly?
I do believe they're still alive. It's very difficult for a species as hardy as humans, be it hominid or Homo sapien, to go extinct. And I know for certain that they were around. We have to keep in mind, though, there's lots of different varieties of different species. So the really, really ancient ones that are really gigantic and really like anthropomorphic, those might be extinct. But they had many, many generations of hybridization with different descendants. And so those hybridized descendant species, absolutely some of them survived. Okay, now do the powers that be certainly know about them, and I believe they are still hiding around in certain geological upheaval zones, mountainous wildernesses. And here in North America, I believe still to this day, they live in some of the national parks, which is why they are national parks and UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and why people go missing there, and why so many of these parks have huge sections that are illegal to explore.
Yeah, because I got to tell you, there's a lot of missing people. So, I mean, I guess that would be one source. And what would be the reason for them being responsible? Are they cannibalistic, or are they trying to bring them in to mate with, or a little of both?
A little of both, I would say, absolutely. We have hard scientific evidence that both of those things occurred. Cannibalism, the archaeological record, this is a dirty secret that you won't read about in the history books because it's taboo and it's related to these cover-ups, but there's a ton of cannibalism in human history, especially ritualistic cannibalism. You know, we all tend to think, about like the whatever, they were like Argentinians and the plane crash, and like but we're not talking about crisis scenarios. We're talking about ritualistic cannibalism, although some of it was due to the invasiveness of these hominids, which then made them. Okay, so if we look for a moment at the biblical tradition, because I in my research I have found that in all these different prehistoric traditions, they recount a similar narrative. And the biblical narrative says that human beings lived together with these Nephilim until the humans, it says, could not sustain them any longer. I'm referring now to the apocryphal text Enoch 7, where they could no longer sustain them, and then the giants turned on mankind, devouring mankind.
Right.
So the biblical tradition suggests that human beings used to feed them.
Oh, wow.
And then when we could no longer sustain them, then they turned on us, and it became cannibalistic. They became cannibalistic.
And Mark, let me ask you this: in all your research, have you found any correlations with different cultures, like with the Christians, Native Americans? And any other societies or groups, have you found they all have a legend or some kind of stories with these giants?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, although they're not necessarily gigantic.
Right.
In some cases, they're actually even diminutive, so like little people. Native American traditions are full of little people, but yes, the giants too, cannibalistic giants as well. The Cherokee. I spent some time with the Cherokee, and they have a tradition of Nunyunui. Nunyunui means dressed in stone. It's a Cherokee word meaning dressed in stone, a reference to this very, very tough, almost scale-like skin that could not be pierced by the Native American weapons.
Wow,
so that's really fascinating to me, because I correlate that with the Beowulf narrative, in which Grendel, who is also a cannibalistic subterranean dwelling giant hominid, he is also said to have this scaly skin that the weapons could not penetrate.
Right, now that's some serious skin. But even the Bible, the story of David and Goliath, I guess that would be considered a giant of that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe. So, people of our culture may prefer a term like an invasive hominid hybrid. But the biblical tradition, I prefer to refer to them as Nephilim, because the biblical authors laid this down for us thousands of years ago. And I find the biblical narrative really to be the most comprehensive of the traditions.
And, in all your research, Mark, out there in the field and doing things, what's some of the most eye-raising evidence that you've found? Have you found or seen some of the bones or skulls from these things that are huge, different?
Oh, sure. I've seen some really bizarre bones in Mexico. I've seen, a lot of, these bones are so veiled in mystery and shrouded in controversy and conspiracy. You have to do really, really diligent research to get a hold of photographs and diagrams. And so a lot of that is mine. Then again, some of it hides in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the most interesting things I've found indeed hide in plain sight, like the Kennewick Man skeleton that appeared in published photographs in mainstream media. Now, granted, these were very small number of photographs. Well, single digit, 2 or 3 maybe, photographs were released.
Right.
And in these photographs, for those who are paying really close attention, if you analyze them carefully, you see that Kennewick Man. And for anyone who's not familiar, Kennewick Man was a 10,000-year-old skeleton discovered in the Pacific Northwest in 1996. Huge controversy between Native American scientists and government, fighting over the bones. 9-year controversy. Ultimately, the bones were allegedly repatriated back and buried back near where they were found.
Yeah, that was my next question. Like,
the initial photographs that were released by the Smithsonian reveal that Kennewick Man had a radically deformed skull.
Okay.
Closer analysis revealed that he had 6 fingers on his right hand as well. And the DNA results, although they are referenced in some published journal articles, no genetic profile was ever made public.
Interesting.
And now the bones, of course, are gone because they've been repatriated. But the Smithsonian never said a word about a deformed skull or 6 fingers.
And listen, did the Kennewick Man or the man, wasn't more than one, but didn't they have red hair also?
Well, that's something that would have been revealed in the genetic analyses, but those results, again, although they were referred to in some published journals, they were never published publicly. And so that's something that so in other words, we wouldn't know if he had red hair. It was such an ancient skeleton.
Right.
But the genes would reveal that. But we don't know because they didn't say that. They won't say exactly what the genes. They played it like the genes indicate that they were closely related to Native Americans. But if you read the articles carefully, they say they're most closely related to Native Americans in South America.
Oh, wow.
Which is strange.
That is strange.
And there's also allegedly some connection to Polynesians in their DNA, too. But see, what we really want is the genetic profile, which they're not showing us.
No, I mean, none of that's,
so
as far as I've known.
They could have really weird genetics.
Yeah, it is. And also, Mark, hasn't some of these Nephilim or giants, didn't some of them have double rows of teeth?
Yes. Yes. Oh, well, and but just real quick to go back to the red hair, I do think the red hair is definitely related to this phenomena. I didn't mean to be dismissive of it. Certainly, there's genetic evidence to suggest that Neanderthals had red hair. And then there's also other, in cultures worldwide, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that they had red hair. And then double rows of teeth, likewise. There's double rows of teeth reported in many of these late 19th century, early 20th century reports of skeletons recovered from the burial mounds in America had double rows of teeth, yes.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. There's double rows of teeth, some of them with 6 digits on top of that. Now, also, in your research and some of the things you've done, I think you mentioned earlier when I talked to you, there was a correlation with some of these ancient sites. Now, were they responsible? Because, I got to tell you, some of these sites, man, it's like, how do they build them? The blocks are so big. You think they were responsible maybe building some of these?
I think they were responsible for building all of them.
Oh, wow.
This is their culture, and this is why we look upon these mounds and these trilithons, like the stone. Well, a henge is a collection of trilithons, but the trilithons, the henges, the menhirs, the standing stones, the burial mounds, the tumuli, the dolmens, the pyramids, the ziggurats, all of this is lost Nephilim culture. And this is why it's so mysterious to us, because a different species of human, an archaic antediluvian species of human, were responsible for building these. Absolutely.
Yeah, I got to tell you, some of those sites are just mind-boggling when you look at them. I mean, It's like how they built them, and what was the purpose of them? And if you really think of it, you would think, well, it would make sense if it was a giants that built them. And so, in your opinion, there's still giants out there today.
Yes. Yes. A relic population.
Right.
Very difficult. I mean, impossible really to say.
But
when we look at the frequency of strange sightings, just what we'll call feral or hominid, human-like figures, to look at the disappearances, I would say there's a relic population of them on the fringes of the wilderness. Upheaval zones, geological. I think the geology is very, very important when it comes to where are they.
And in your opinion, is there a certain parallel lines that there's more sightings of these, or do the sightings of these giants kind of coincide with maybe some Sasquatch sightings?
Absolutely. Well, that's the answer. This is the answer to the Bigfoot Sasquatch mystery. They are a certain species of invasive hybridized humans, hominids.
Okay.
And Sasquatch is a really interesting one that might even be a rival to the invasive cannibalistic Nephilim. It's possible that it's that complex that there's even rival species that may have even been engineered to remedy the invasive destruction caused by the Nephilim. And I'm basing that on ancient Sumerian tradition of the Enkidu.
Okay, because that makes sense, because if you think about it, even modern humans, we kind of live alongside Neanderthals, and I'm sure we've had interactions and interbreeding and maybe fights, and I could see how that could happen the same with the Sasquatch and the Nephilim.
Exactly. See, we're finding this really warm patch of sunny intersection between science and ancient tradition. I call this the radical center. In geometry, when you have two spheres that overlap, and there's this one section where it's in both spheres, That is the radical center. And we, my friend, are now in the radical center, where you can see the parallel between the scientific evidence, which is that Homo sapiens lived alongside many different species of hominid: Neanderthal, Heidelbergensis, Homo floresiensis, Denisovan. There's many others, and our species has lived along those species for hundreds of thousands of years. And there were conflicts, and there was interbreeding, and legendary feats of legendary construction and sorcery and battles and things of this nature.
And I got to ask you a very serious question, because the powers that be, they have really, steadfastly for what, 100 years or better, really tried to cover this up. Why do you think that is? Why do they not want to let the truth come out?
Well, that's a great question. And of course, I've thought a lot about this and researched it and done my best to see who these people are and what exactly motivates them. And this is about the few who rule over the many. You look at people like the Rockefeller Foundation. John D. Rockefeller essentially founded the Board of Education. Okay, so the entire education system in America. He founded it, and he's quoted as saying, "I don't want thinkers, I want workers."
Okay.
And we have to remember that men like Rockefeller, they were building a nation. They were building a nation, and they were building a secular nation. And they knew then that the people were easier to control if they were secular rather than religious, because religion would bind the people together. So they didn't want to go validating ancient narratives, be it Native American or biblical or any other tradition. They wanted them to believe in their paradigm. They want to tell them what to believe, that they're monkeys, that they're animals.
Interesting. And if there's still giants out there today, or Nephilim, where do they hide? Where do they sleep? Where are they where we can't see them all the time?
Well, we have discovered about 1% of all the cave systems on planet Earth.
True.
And of those cave systems that we've discovered, we've probably only mapped 1% of the 1% that we've discovered.
True.
So we know more about the surface of the moon than we do what's under our own feet.
Yeah.
And that diagram you see in the science book of the core and the crust and the mantle, well, that's a cute picture. But the truth is, we don't really know about the inner dynamics, the geophysical realities of this planet. And certainly some very brilliant people like Hapgood and Einstein, Jules Verne, who's now known as the prophet of science fiction for so often being correct in his predictions, they all believe that the Earth was hollow to some extent. And it could be accessed from the surface by volcanic tubes. We're talking about the hollow Earth theory. And I do believe that's another universal parallel in ancient traditions around the world, that the inside of the Earth is not only hollow, but is inhabited.
Right. Well, that would make sense. And
so that is my position, that these giants live on in these crossroads between the surface and subterranean realms, which is why we can't find them.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, Mark. Also, let me ask you, along with the sightings and where they found bones or where these giants may have been sighted, does it kind of overlap where there is cave systems?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It absolutely overlaps. It fits like a glove. It fits like an absolute glove. If you look at the if you look at the clusters of disappearances in the national parks, they practically hug particularly, it's both on the east and west coast, and up the Rockies. Now, some skeptical people could look at that and say, well, that's because people go disappearing in these mountain wilderness areas. Yes, and that's true. But we have data, search and rescue data, that indicates, dead or alive, most every person who goes missing and for whom they initiate a search, some high 90 percentiles are found dead or alive within a certain time frame. The data indicates this. So when these people go missing and they're never found, or perhaps they're found many years later in some weird place where people have searched many times, or in some cases found many miles away, it makes even less sense. In those instances, they're outliers. So absolutely, there's a geological aspect to this. If you look at the Ring of Fire, you will see that the entire Ring of Fire is absolutely loaded with these incidents and with ancient traditions, all relating to the underworld, ancient deities, giants, people disappearing, interbreeding, all of these things.
Right. So I bet if you took many different layers of the missing people reports, the cave systems, sightings of bones, and you overlapped them all, I bet there would be a lot of red dots in a lot of the areas overlapping.
I am in the process of creating that map right now.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And it's a doozy.
I bet it is.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see that one. I got another quick question here. You ever see there's footprints in stones. I mean, giant footprints. Mm-hmm. And some of these footprints are huge, and we're talking some of 1 million years old.
Petrosamoglyphs, they call them.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, because
they're really huge, and they're really mysterious, and they're really all over the world.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And, also, I can't think the name of it, but there are some steps. I know you probably know the ones I'm talking about. They're huge steps. It like, I mean, a giant meter.
I believe you're referring to the steps at Baalbek.
Yeah,
Baalbek, they're these really gigantic steps, but actually they have them in Peru and Bolivia as well.
Yeah.
So you might as well be talking about those. But and I might be confusing that the Baalbek site is where that huge megalith, it's like the biggest megalith on Earth. That I believe that's the same place where those steps are. And there's no archaeological explanation for them. They look like steps, and they are steps. The only problem is it would have been a really, really enormous human or bipedal whatever that would walk these steps.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be practical for, you or I to use them. We'd have to have a ladder to go up one step. It didn't even make sense.
Right.
But now, again, if somebody was, I guess 20 foot high. So we're winding down. Gary took sick tonight, so we're going to end the show here at the top of the hour, Mark. So just a couple quick questions. Where do you see the field of this giants and going in the future?
Well, the field of research is going nowhere. But where it's going is into a war zone. War is the answer. And I'm talking about a spiritual war here. A war for, people sometimes it's like, well, ancient history, giants, like, what do I care? What is that? Why does that matter to me? Like, what do I do with that on a day-to-day basis? Well, it does matter, actually. And it's not just about your history and how your history is related to your identity and how this is related to, like, why you get up out of the bed in the morning. But it's much, much, much deeper and darker than that. These people who control the world aren't just interested in downplaying this to make people into slaves. That is definitely a huge part of it. But it's not just about like money or control or power. It is deeper and darker. These ruling elite people themselves trace their heritage back to the ruling elite of Europe, the European monarchs, and these people are themselves Nephilim descendants.
Wow. Interesting.
That's where their royal bloodline comes from. This is where the whole entire concept of the divine right to rule. The divine right to rule is suggesting that certain bloodlines are descended from the gods.
Mm.
And that is what Nephilim were. Hybridized, beings between deities and gods. And these people, the ruling elite, you might notice how cultural events around the world are getting more and more and more relentlessly demonic every day.
There's something going on. Mark, I got to tell you, we've only got about a minute or less left. Please tell everybody where they can find you and get a hold of you.
Yes, you can check me out. I have an Instagram account, My Apocalyptic Chronicles on Instagram, and then I have my own blog, is markacarpenter.com. And I do have some books coming out very, very soon. Paradigm Lost, Science Fiction, and The Nephilim Theory, a nonfiction complement. And these will all be out soon, and you can see me on Instagram or my blog. And I just want to say thank you guys for having me, and to everybody listening out there. Just take back control of your water and your history and your science and your land and your food.
Well, Mark, I hope you have a great week coming up, and thank you again for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of the week. And hey, everybody, I want to apologize. Gary wasn't feeling very well tonight. Hopefully he feels better. Next Wednesday, the 8th, we will have Captain Paul Watson on from Greenpeace, Whale Wars. Always a great guest, so make sure you tune in for that one. And then we got other great guests coming up. So everybody, be safe, and we will talk to you soon.